Yes, I'm talking to you with all that melanin popping. Listen, I know there are a lot of misconceptions out there about ancestry tests, and we'd like you to get to know us. We're African Ancestry, and we are the only ancestry company designed by Black people, for Black people. The only ancestry company that can provide the actual African country of origin and ethnic group. Founded in 2003 by Dr. Rick Kittles and Dr. Gina Page.
Hi there.
With over 30,000 samples, African Ancestry has the largest and most comprehensive database of DNA of African lineages. I'm talking Yoruba, Ashanti, Mende, Fong, and more. African Ancestry never researches, sells, or shares your DNA. We destroy it. In other words, we're only using your DNA to tell you where you're from, and we won't tell anyone else about you either. The African Ancestry DNA test will help you uncover the history of and unlock the power of a cultural, emotional, physical, and spiritual connection to your country and tribe of origin. Shouldn't you be able to connect to the beliefs, practices, and customs of your people? How powerful would that be? To find your tribe and discover who you truly are, take the right test. Go to AfricanAncestry.com.
I wanna know ya, Cameroon, Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, gotta let me show ya, Nigeria, Bioko Island, Liberia.
Welcome to our session, Understanding and Owning Your Genetic Identity, hosted by Reverend Matsamela Matfumo, activist and host of Make It Plain podcast, with guests Dr. Rick Kittles and Dr. Altavis Ewing. Dr. Rick Kittles is co-founder and chief science officer of AfricanAncestry.com. He is also professor and founding director of the Division of Health Equities within the Department of Population Sciences at the City of Hope. He is also Associate Director of Health Equities of City of Hope's Comprehensive Cancer Center. Dr. Kittles is well known for his research of prostate cancer and health disparities among African Americans. His research has focused on understanding the complex issues surrounding race, genetic ancestry, and health disparities. He received a PhD in biological sciences from George Washington University, and his first faculty appointment was at Howard University, where he helped establish the National Human Genome Center. Dr. Kittles has published over 200 research articles on prostate cancer genetics, race and genetics, and health disparities. His high-profile research and his strong ability to communicate genetic concepts and issues eloquently and understandably to the lay public has been featured in 5 PBS and BBC network documentaries, as well as various media outlets around the world. Dr. Kittles was named by the Huffington Post as one of 50 iconic Black trailblazers who represent every state in America. Dr. Altavis Ewing is the Senior Science Leader for Global Health Equity Strategy at Genentech. Trained as a genomic health equity researcher, Dr. Ewing dedicates her professional career to ensuring that emerging genetic and genomic services and resources do not further exacerbate disparities in health outcomes. She holds a PhD in human genetics with a specialization in genetic counseling from Howard University and received a BA in biology from Rhodes College. Dr. Ewing is an African Ancestry family member.
All right.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, we are commencing this, next to last panel, so to speak. We have something special in the next hour, but we've had a number of wonderful panelists all week long at the Remember Who You Are Identity Summit. And so what better way to wrap up than, since this is African Ancestry, to wrap with a conversation about genetics and DNA. So again, welcome to Dr. Kittles, welcome to Dr. Ewing. Pleasure to have you both. Folks, I'm at home in the Bronx, so there's a street festival literally going on outside my window. And I was like, oh my God, but everybody on the panel was cool, like, let's get on. So
the celebration.
Right. We have a little musical accompaniment with us. I try to teach my Latinx sisters and brothers, though, that we actually are the same. A lot of them are darker than I am. But again, part of the struggle is getting people to see their African ancestry. The only reason I'm not Dominican or Panamanian or Haitian, for example, is because our ancestors got off the boat a little bit later on. So that's something we have to keep in mind. But let's start this way. Let's get right to this, because Dr. Kittles and Dr. Ewing, one of the concerns that you always hear, especially from Black people, from African Americans, when you start talking about DNA and doing DNA research and genetics research, if there's one thing everybody seems to remember, even transgenerationalists handed down, is the Tuskegee experiment. And people don't trust things. Some people still don't trust doctors, but some people definitely don't trust. Sometimes, should I give them my DNA? Is it safe? Is somebody going to do anything with it? Let's go, ladies first. Dr. Ewing, how do you respond to those concerns? And I know that's a big deal for you, because obviously that one of your jobs has been to protect the sanctity and privacy of our people's DNA.
Right, absolutely. And I truly believe that I am in the space of genetics and genomic health equity by design and with a purpose. And as you said, it is to help protect my community. We have to acknowledge the egregious practices that occurred in terms of Tuskegee and all of the unknown Tuskegee incidents as well. There are hundreds of others that we don't talk about that just are not making it to the top of the list. But at the same time, in acknowledging that, I also believe in empowering my community to make informed decisions to get involved in genetics research, in the genetics and genomics movement, because there are consequences if we do not get involved. So ultimately, my role as a genetic counselor, as a genomic health equity scientist, is to help inform individuals so that they can make their own empowered decision, and the decision that they believe is best for them, that they believe is best for their family and for their community. So that's definitely how I approach the situation.
What about you, Dr. Kittles? How do you respond to that?
Well, I think we have to look at it, from a historical context, right? So there is ample reason why African Americans and even Hispanic Latino populations have this fear and this lack of trust as it relates to genomic research, individuals getting their DNA. I mean, if you think about it, even in the context of law enforcement, police brutality and folks getting access to DNA that could be used to hurt them and their family later on downstream, I think is an important and honest fear and concern. And so one of the things that we started when we started African Ancestry, one of the things we wanted to let folks know is that, number one, we're not sharing anything with anybody. This is a service that we're providing. We're getting access to your DNA, and then after we provide that service, we destroy it. And most companies don't do that. But the bigger picture is this: how do we engage a community that historically has been taken advantage of and hurt, so that we can leverage science and technology to improve their health? And so it's a very it's a tightrope that we're walking, and there's a lot of tension in that movement. And there are different models one can use to say, okay, if you participate in this study, let's say on hypertension or kidney disease, we'll make sure that your DNA is not shared with other scientists around the world, which happens so often, or it's not put into these databases that law enforcement could get into. So there, you have to be upfront in the beginning in these studies with these disparate, what I call disparate communities. Disparate meaning, it's a disparity in terms of knowledge. It's a disparity in terms of access, and we have to be much more creative. The community also wants to see themselves in the research too. They don't want folks coming down from some ivory towers talking about, give me your DNA. I mean, that doesn't work anymore. We need to have folk who look like ourselves, who have similar sensitivities and ideas, thought processes, and want to see the community benefit just like the community does. So there are different models, and it's a challenge. But it's a very interesting time. It's a very interesting time because science and technology is moving things along really, really fast. I mean, this whole thing about precision medicine and Altavice, I know you can add to this because of your role at Genentech, but it's opening up a wide range of utility, of use that could benefit the health of diverse communities.
You read my mind about the presence of Black scientists, but Dr. Ewing, go ahead. You were about to say something. I'm sorry.
Right. One thing I wanted to add to that is, in addition to learning about Henrietta Lacks and the Tuskegee syphilis study, or the U.S. Public Health Service study at Tuskegee, it's also important for us to know and learn about those success stories too. So there have been instances where we have been involved in research, and researchers have been able to develop medications based on our genetic makeup. So medications that are used and distributed across the globe. So I think more of those success stories have to be shared as well, so that we can be adequately informed about the injustices that have occurred, as well as those practices that are truly beneficial for us, and not only beneficial for our community, but for the world in general.
That's sort of the catch-22, because for every anxiety people may have, we also know this, and we know this well, that as African Americans, we are predisposed and inclined to certain health issues. And I mean, logically, if we don't figure that out, then we're going to continue to be the ones disproportionately affected by those health issues, right? Dr. Kills, I mean, we're looking at COVID right now. I mean, so what are the things that make us more susceptible to diabetes and hypertension?
Right.
I hear you say.
So what you're talking about are health disparities, right? These are diseases, common complex diseases that disproportionately impact people of African descent and also Latino, Native American descent. These, you can't put them all together in one bag and say, this is the reason why we're more prone and higher prevalence of these diseases. Many of them have to do with social conditions. And when I say social, I mean social cultural, but also this issue of social justice in healthcare and access of prevention opportunities and education around prevention, access around quality care. So, when we talk about type 2 diabetes, for instance, where we know it's disproportionately impacted Hispanics, Hispanic, Latinos, African Americans, there's very little evidence that suggests genes or family history in terms of genetics accounts for the disparity between whites and blacks, or Hispanics and whites. What accounts for a lot of that is behavior, diet, lifestyle. But then there are other disparities like prostate cancer, where there is this strong genetic component, where it appears that the genes that increase one's risk are more common, let's say, in West African populations, which is the bulk of our gene pool. So I think we have to be honest about some of these risk factors, and then determine and figure out interventions around, what we find. So it's not a clear thing where it's all in the DNA, because I can tell you right now, genetics is not going to help the bulk of disparities. I think Dr. Kamara Jones says it really well. She says zip code is a better predictor of overall health than DNA code. And that's right on. I mean, when you talk about neighborhoods and the impact of discrimination and segregation in many urban communities, what we're talking about are social conditions that have been set up based on racism in this country. So you could spend all this money on genetics if you want to, but that's just an exercise in academic, a mutual admiration. And Altar'V's knows what I'm talking about, where we go out and, we write these grants, get all this money, write these papers, and don't change a damn thing.
Mm-hmm. And really to connect it back to precision medicine, as you mentioned earlier. So as Dr. Kittle said, genetics is just a supplemental tool that will help us better understand disparities, better understand how to implement personalized healthcare. But really, it's important for us to start with knowing our personal health history, layer that on top of our family health history, and then that genetic information, because that critical information will help us really implement personalized healthcare in a way that we see equity among all populations. So if you have a strong family history of heart disease or cancer or another condition, that may actually qualify you for genetic testing or for certain types of screens that can help us manage your risk for certain conditions. It may help reduce your risk, and ultimately it may even help prevent the occurrence of that disease if you start with that information, your personal health history, family health history, and have that candid and continued conversation with family members, and then move that conversation to the healthcare provider setting, where they will hopefully ask you more questions to delve a little deeper to really understand the context of your risk. That's the way that we will really be able to implement personalized healthcare in a way that all populations benefit and in a way that we can all play an active role. And I truly believe that it starts with having that conversation.
You mentioned earlier, Dr. Ewing, when we first started speaking, that, if we're not present in this right now, I'm paraphrasing, there's some things we're going to miss. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yes. So when we think about where we are with personalized healthcare today, it's a function of the data that we have access to. It's called real world data. It's a function of those populations that are participating in research. And the truth is, underrepresented populations are not adequately represented in a way that it informs the science, in a way that it will help us truly benefit from personalized medicine right now. So as you mentioned, it is a catch-22 because it starts with the research, and in order for us to generate meaningful insights and utility from that research, we have to be involved. And we don't have to just show up as participants. As Dr. Kittle said, we have to play an active role. We have to be the clinicians caring for our community, the scientists leading the studies. We also have to pour into our youth. Let's mentor, inspire, and position them to be scientists, businessmen, businesswomen, and those individuals who are leading the studies. We have to play an active role. It should not be unidirectional. It needs to be bidirectional. And we can even hold researchers, hold institutions and companies accountable. As participants in research, we have rights and we should be informed of those rights. And one of those rights is, if you are ever uncomfortable participating in a research study, you always have the opportunity to withdraw from that study. So know your rights, engage in conversations with the researchers, with the institutions. Oftentimes they may have staff members employed to help you understand privacy policies that may be in place. But we've got to continue to play an active role and ultimately hold people accountable. And that can be done in a multitude of ways.
Rick, Dr. Kittles, in terms of representation and participation, is that improving, or do we still have a ways to go to find folk who look like us in the mix?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we still have a ways to go, brother. We still have a ways to go. I mean, I was looking at recent data collected from different data sets that deal with clinical issues, whether it's clinical sequencing for disease, cancer, genome atlas, all these different data sets. We're still underrepresented, much more than we are even, when we look at the representation in this country in terms of proportion of people of color. And I mean, as I said, there's a lot of reasons for that. But if for me as a geneticist and someone who who sees the value of genetics in terms of aiding it to improve the health of our communities. I get concerned. I try to come up with new creative models and new ideas to engage the community around, let's say, prostate cancer studies or studying sickle cell drugs, or So what I try to do is instill this importance and this purpose around genetics. Now, I also at the same time say, look, be careful who you engage. Who you let engage the community. So we have to see ourselves in these studies, and I keep saying that. I always come back to that. When you see yourself in these studies, you're much better positioned to have a better result for the community.
And I guess that requires too, for people, I mean, is there a way, Dr. Ewing, for people to be able to scrutinize some of these situations they're being brought into to confirm and be clear that they're reflected in them in those studies from top to bottom, that there's representation of Black people?
Yes, absolutely. Because the truth is, not all genetic tests, not all genetic studies that are conducted are developed with us in mind. And that's something that we should be aware of. So we can hold companies accountable. We can hold institutions accountable. And I would encourage us to start with our institutions putting financial support behind the communities that they truly want to engage. Are they partnering with advocacy organizations or support groups within that community? They really have to earn the trust. Our trust should not be given. We should be very protective of our DNA. We should be very protective of our community in general. So hold people accountable. Look at the workforce, the demographic profile of their workforce. Is it a diverse workforce? Are they investing in those diverse members within that workforce as well? Are they pouring into the future careers of individuals from underrepresented populations? Some companies may set up internships, and in setting up the internships, they also need to pair interns with people who will ensure the success of those interns, and not just pair them with someone just to fill a quota or just to feel as though they're moving the needle when in actuality they're not moving the needle. So there are different ways that we can really scrutinize companies to make sure that they are committed to the community and we're not just being used as individuals, as participants within the study. But I think that's where collectively as a community, we can come up with measures of accountability, and we can apply those all across the board to ensure that companies are really doing right by us, because we have to work together. We have to co-partner, co-create to really advance health equity and do so in the right way.
So I think those are great points, Dr. Ewing. Really good points. I would also include community advisory boards for these studies where the community members are involved and from the beginning as one engages the community around a particular genetic study. I also think that if you think about the business model of many of these companies, it's one in which information is power, right? They try to extract as much information so that they can leverage it to sell to different entities. And when you figure out that diversity matters and there's more information in a diverse population genetically, then all of a sudden the focus goes there. That's part of an investment for the company. What does the community get? You know what I'm saying? So we have to think about it as a bidirectional relationship where there's benefit of this investment, because it's an investment for the community too. So I think that's why we sort of have to think about some of these types of studies.
Folks, I want to invite our over 15,000 of the Remember Who You Are Summit members to ask questions. You can put your questions wherever you're watching it, in the chat, on Facebook, or what have you. We'll try to get those questions answered by our panelists, Dr. Ewing and Dr. Kittles, as we go forward. So we've been throwing around the term personalized medicine, but let's not assume everyone knows exactly what that is, Dr. Ewing. and how common is becoming? Is it growing as a process? Tell our audience, first of all, exactly what personalized medicine is, what genetics and DNA has to do with that, and is it becoming more widespread?
Right. We are definitely in the era of personalized medicine, and it's widespread, but for select communities, and that's primarily going to be for people of European descent, and that's because, again, they are the ones primarily represented in the databases. So personalized medicine is the idea of being able to curate a healthcare experience for someone based on their personal health history, their family health history, certain biomarkers that we've been able to detect, as well as their genetics, their genetic profile. And you take that precise information and you curate and you manage someone's healthcare. You manage their risk. You manage, you prevent disease in them. That is really what personalized healthcare is. But we need all of that information in accumulation in order to really realize and actualize personalized medicine. And right now, as we mentioned, our populations are not represented in the databases. So that really limits our ability to benefit from where we currently are in terms of personalized healthcare and precision medicine. So again, we have to find a way to get more involved in the research in multiple ways so that ultimately we can move the needle and ensure that everyone benefits from personalized medicine.
So I just want to follow up on that question and come back to you, Dr. Kittles. In terms of our lack of representation in the databases, is that because of our trepidation, or is it because those at the moment gathering data for the databases ain't that interested in us right now?
Right. So there are two reasons. Historically, it's been one in which obviously there's the fear and lack and the fear and distrust in the Black community in terms of that engagement. The second reason, which is also historic and really hasn't changed that much, is that people study themselves. And so for the most part, the bulk of the money, the bulk of the research is on people of European descent because they're mainly the researchers. And then when they find that they want to study populations of color, they go out there and they try to recruit and they say, oh, we can't do it. So either they try to hire a couple of Black people to try to do it, or they just move on. And so when that's happened over time, and so those are two of the reasons why those numbers are the way they are. Now they're starting to change, but it's not rapid enough. I mean, there is a huge effort along the way now in terms of precision medicine. It's called the federal government's All of Us program. It was part of what Obama had set up with this precision medicine initiative, the PMI. And so one of the outgrowths was this huge study called All of Us, where they're looking for over over 1 million or so people throughout the country. And they're looking for really good representation of communities of color. And so they're putting a lot of money and a lot of effort in it. They're doing a lot of focus around engagement, community engagement, creative practices around engagement of communities of color. So we'll see how that works. But it's like I said, you have to be creative, you have to put some resources behind it, and you also have to build that trust. And we'll see how that goes over the next couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
And I absolutely agree with Dr. Kittles in that we've seen a number of people practicing comfortable and convenient science, and it has led to consequences for various populations. And even in the clinical setting, when we think about genetic testing and genetic test results, there's always that possibility that a result for someone from an underrepresented population may not be as informative as it could be for someone from a European population. And again, that goes back to what do we currently know about underrepresented groups? How are we interpreting their genetics? So one of the things that really drove me to pursue my PhD and to try to come up with questions and answers to some of the difficult challenges that we were witnessing in the clinic was the fact that people of African descent oftentimes would undergo genetic testing, but would receive an ambiguous result. And it was interpreted as ambiguous, again, because we didn't have enough data to help us fully understand the meaning of that result. And we were sending people out of the clinic saying you have a change in your DNA, but we don't really know if that change puts you at increased risk for the disease that you have, for the disease that's very prevalent in your family. Whereas with other groups, there was a higher probability that they would get an informative result that could open the door for them to pursue surgeries and certain types of treatments that would improve their quality of life and even possibly prolong longevity for those groups. But again, that's not the case for a number of underrepresented populations. We oftentimes may be more likely to get those gray area results that don't always guide our medical management or allow us to really experience the precision medicine that is being implemented today.
Speaking of ambiguous results, obviously a lot of people joining us now are interested in their DNA for genealogical purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Kittles, that's one of the strengths of African ancestry. You go to other places and do the DNA testing for genealogy. You do get ambiguous results.
Mm-hmm.
And so, folks, we've been using the term database.
Mm-hmm.
So African ancestry, I mean, this is medical, but African ancestry has a database of information of indigenous African peoples and groups, and particularly ethnic groups.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm trying to get people to see, Dr. Rick, is that this is the difference made when you have a database with information from those groups versus when you don't, correct?
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's a great comparison.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when Altavis mentioned this issue of the clinical database of, for instance, with the breast cancer genetic test and people of color coming back with these unknown variants, unknown significance. It's the same situation where, these companies and these tests are mining databases that are mainly of European ancestry, have very little information that's informative for people of African descent. So, that was why we filled a niche back in 2003 when we launched African Ancestry. It was like, there was no other company that would even, and still today, that has the amount of in terms of comprehensiveness of a database of African descent people. And so the reason that happened is because it was a brother and a sister of West African descent who came together and said, let's do this, because we wanted to leverage what we saw was occurring in terms of science and technology and leverage that for our people. So, we've had to maneuver in some interesting times in order to create this and do it in the way that we felt comfortable and the community felt comfortable.
Got an audience question for you, Dr. Kittles, first. Dr. Kittles, I took the right test with African ancestry, but before I did, I took the wrong test. What security concerns should I have and prepare for?
When I hear security concerns, I think about those threat levels where it's low threat to high threat, and then you have the different colors.
Yeah.
Right.
Good point.
Well, depending on what company you went to, it could be one of the high level threats. And I say this all the time to folks, on social media when I give my talks. I'm like, hey, you have to be careful who you give your DNA to. I mean, we are excited about this technology and we want to know more about our history. But some people are giving their DNA to people or companies who then put it on the web, their profiles, their genome background, and that is very, very risky because what happens is law enforcement comes through, and they'll say, look, we've had these cold cases. We now see this increase in these databases that are publicly available. Let's run through them and see where we get some matches. And in some cases, they'll get a partial match, what we call a familial match, and then leverage that to terrorize and take over, not take over, but to find the culprit through family members. And so I think we need to be very, very careful with that. when you purchase these tests, there is a terms and conditions, which is a contract, an agreement. You have to read that, because so many companies say, we're going to keep your DNA. We're going to store it for whatever purpose. Sometimes they don't even say, they just say, we're going to store it for use later. And, people are like, oh, well, they gave me a free test, or it was so cheap, I'm going to get it. And come to find out, the reason it was cheap, because part of their business model was to collect data, collect information. And that information is on you and your family. And so you can't, it's like giving up your social security number. How many of us do that now? Very
right.
It's the law to ask for that in many settings. And fingerprint, same situation. So, and then some say, oh, well, you can go outside and spit gum out, and somebody can come behind you and pick it up and get your DNA profile. Yes, you can. But that's a little different than actually saying, here's my swab.
Right. Yeah, we absolutely have to be selective and protective again of our DNA. And again, let's hold the companies accountable. Not all of the companies were created equal. Some of them have a few more privacy protections in place, but that's where we have to be informed in navigating this journey. And we have to feel comfortable holding those companies accountable, call them and ask them questions about their privacy policies, their terms of agreements. And if there's something that you do not agree with, then you can always exercise your option to delete your data. You can have conversations with whether it's a customer care member, and oftentimes these companies have privacy counsel, have lawyers on staff who can also answer some questions for you or provide something in writing. But various companies have different personal permissions that we can opt into. But ultimately, if you are dissatisfied, if you have concern, protect your data by deleting your data. So just be affirmed in knowing that you may have decided to participate today, but weeks later, months or years later, you can always turn around and say, this doesn't rub me the right way. So let me go ahead and withdraw my consent to continue participating or continue even engaging in this study.
Here's another audience question for Dr. Ewing. Do you think genetics will play a difference in the effectiveness of any COVID-19 vaccine? Should more people of African descent be volunteering as research participants?
So in terms of will genetics play, I think genetics will have a role, but I do not think it will be the answer. I do not think it will be the ultimate determining factor in terms of why certain populations are experiencing COVID-19 at disproportionate rates. I think it's a combination of social implications, the systems that are in place that are not working for the majority of populations of color. But again, it's important for us to get involved in research, not just genetics-based research, but other types of research as well. There's intervention-based research. There are educational efforts to really understand, should we disseminate information a little bit differently to the community of color as opposed to another community? So again, that goes back to that personalized healthcare aspect where you're not applying a one-size-fits-all intervention or approach. You will have to tailor it. You may tailor it based on population. You may tailor it based on persons. But yes, we have to be actively involved in all types of research, but not just as participants. We can be involved, again, as citizen scientists, clinicians caring for our community, scientists leading the studies. Those are different ways that we can get involved in, as Dr. Kittles mentioned earlier, those community advisory boards. Researchers should be consulting the leaders within communities to really get their expertise, because they have the ear and the heart of the community, and they should be working with them. Because again, it should be a joint effort. It should be a partnership, and we should not feel as though we're just presenting as research participants.
Thank you. Another question, really for both of you. We'll let you take a crack at it. First, Dr. Kittles, from the audience. Could either of you speak on epigenetics in terms of trauma being passed down to descendants of slaves? Dr. Kittles, you want to go first?
Yeah, that's a very fascinating area of study right now. This epigenetics, which explores how genes are manipulated or change upon exposures of the environment, right? So, within, when you're born, you have a set of genes that are set, but over your lifetime, there are epigenetic phenomena that occur. Some genes are turned on, some are turned off, some are silenced at a particular time, and sometimes that has to do with different exposures that's occurring, right? And it could be issues of smoking or pollution, drinking. But what's fascinating is there are people now exploring this issue of trauma that a mother has, let's say, who's pregnant with a daughter, right? So the infant child already has the eggs for the next generation. So the grandmother of that child, the exposure that she has could impact the genetics of that child. And so that's a really fascinating area now. And if you place it in the context of not just slavery, but just discrimination, persecution, racism, back, even before Jim Crow era, that could create an interesting model to explore as it relates to the health of African Americans in various communities.
Dr. Ewing, would you like to address epigenetics?
So I actually have not been involved in any epigenetic studies to date, but I do realize the importance of it because, again, genetics alone, the code within our DNA that we inherit from mom and dad, that does not tell the entire story. So it is very important for us to understand what are those environmental exposures that could be modifying the DNA and modifying it in a way that increases our risk for certain conditions that we do see are more prevalent in certain family members. So it will definitely play a very important role. And I'll be curious to see how it presents within clinic, especially within the context of genetic counseling and genetic testing in the future.
I was just discussing with another panelist earlier in the week, Dr. Patricia Newton. National Geographic did a story about the possibility of children born or brought to term during this COVID trauma, that COVID trauma could affect them. I think they even call them COVID-19 babies or something like that. And so it's kind of, to me, difficult to dismiss any and all the traumas that we as African people have endured, and somehow we think they aren't handed down. But that's how we started. We talk about Tuskegee. There's hardly anyone around left who was a part of that experiment. But every Black person knows about it, because it's been handed down. So we're aware of it. And the trepidation that comes from it, what other word can you use other than transgenerational trauma? Dr. Kittle, I'm curious about something. As, for example, you deal with DNA research, and you have this massive database of African DNA, and then you have DNA of African Americans. At any point, is there any curiosity or are there conversations? For example, if part of my matrilineage is Mende, are there some health or biological characteristics that I might share as Mende with the Mende people of Sierra Leone? Are there any conversations about getting into that type?
Yeah, there are. I mean, that's a great question. We are having those conversations because, I think it's time for us to be position ourselves to be more engaged in this arena. Initially, when we started the company, we were focused on leveraging the technology to simply provide a service and leave it at that, not to explore anything else. now, given the tension in the field, the need for more diversity, the fact that we have to create a model of where the communities are represented and protected, I think it's time for us to do that. And so what we're starting to do is explore throughout not just these mitochondrial and Y chromosome lineages. Now we're looking across every chromosome to see if there are some patterns of inheritance that are like big chunks of Mendel descendant chunks of chromosomes, and what genes are in there in those chunks, and how those genes may or may not play a role in health. So we're starting to explore that. I think it's going to lead to some very cool products and information that the community can leverage. For instance, when one looks at some of these diseases that are common among Jews, like for instance, Tay-Sachs, I mean, that was part of that process where they went in and explored, sequenced a lot of DNA from that Jewish community, and then said, this is where we see the this founder effect, or this inheritance of these mutations that are leading to Tay-Sachs and other diseases. So I think it's about time that we really start focusing in on that. For so long, we've just had what we call the Yoruba population from Nigeria in our databases, right? And then from there, we started getting more and more samples. Now we got the 1,000 Genomes Project, where there's publicly available data of samples throughout the world. And Africa is a part of it, still very small, but it's a lot more than just one ethnic group like it was when I was in school, and when I immediately after I finished, when I started at Howard. I mean, all we had was just Yoruba. And that was another reason why I wanted to start collecting more samples from different communities, because I was trying to answer questions about Black folk, and I couldn't rely on what was available at that time in publicly accessible databases.
Right.
I also think that's how we truly unlock the greatness within our genome, within our DNA. We know that ancestry and health information are inextricably linked. So we have to couple that information in order to better understand how do we mitigate our risk for various conditions? How do we prevent certain conditions? But I'm also looking forward to the conversations that ensue as a result of that information being made available. Hopefully people will feel more comfortable talking to family members about their diagnoses for conditions, or hopefully they'll also feel more comfortable talking to their healthcare provider as well. Again, I think those conversations are critically important, where we have to be open and honest with our family members, and we have to continue those conversations because it truly can help save lives. But again, we know that ancestral information and health information is inextricably linked. So Dr. Kittles, I'm really looking forward to those resources being available to the community. And I know that it will help us feel empowered in terms of continuing to distill that information and ensuring that our community is making informed decisions about their health.
Right.
Dr. Ewing, we talked about reading between the lines when we're involved in these things. Is there, or have you heard of any arrangements where one can maintain ownership of one's DNA and still benefit from research outcomes? Is there any kind of way to maneuver that?
So there are definitely different types of research studies. And each study has what's called a consent form. And in that consent form, it will lay out the terms, the options that are available to you as a participant. I am unaware of a study where you can maintain complete control of your DNA. But I do know that some companies, when they are collecting DNA from individuals, they will de-identify the DNA and they will combine it in aggregated information to present it. But again, do your research, be informed about what companies those are, what research studies those are, and if they are available. So all of the research studies are not one size fit all or generic. And that's where we should be encouraged and we should feel empowered to really delve into the research studies to fully understand them. And if we do not understand, do not be afraid to pick up the phone and call someone to ask questions or even send emails. And I would encourage us as a community to even talk with our loved ones, to talk with our friends about various research studies. And, maybe there's a particular type of study that really fit your needs and that you felt more comfortable participating in, and you can share that research study with your loved ones, with your family members, and they can look for similar research studies. But again, that's where we have to be informed, and we have to know that we are empowered to really curate the research experience that we truly desire and we deserve.
We just had a little debate recently in public, Dr. Kittles, when it was made known, well, two of our HBCUs, Dillard, I think, and Xavier, I think I'm right about that, made the announcement that they wanted, and encourage their students to fully participate in trials. And here's what we saw an example. Number of African Americans in leadership and in the bioethics world were like, wait a minute, slow down for a minute. Have we really vetted this and what this is all about? And there was a lot of backlash because of that. I'm curious, are there any, have you seen or witnessed or found any, and the argument that, let me say this first, the argument that the presidents made was a similar argument to what we're making now, but it was a little different. I think it left out a couple steps. It said, well, we can't deal with COVID. We can't have people making decisions and we're left out.
Right.
But then I think it left out the other part. Well, you just don't do that for the sake of it. You still got to make sure that who's doing these trials is still acting in its best interest, right? Right.
It's one of those. It's a double-edged sword, man. I'm telling you. So you have a crisis at the moment. You want to contribute information so that your community can benefit, but you don't know what happens after that. You have no idea what's happening after that project is over. And that's where the ethicists and the social scientists should be a part of that discussion before you make that blanket sort of statement. Right now, there is a lot of focus and attention on HBCUs to get them to, at several levels, to get them to educate their Black students about genomics and health, and then also to get them to participate in different studies. I mean, and they range from donating to the bone marrow transplant association to sickle cell and type 2 diabetes research. And so they're getting hit now with, we know that you guys don't have much resources. We know that your science and technology is hurting. We want you to participate in this study that we have because we want to include more Blacks. And some folks are just going with this without really doing an investigation. Because I'm telling you, based on what I know of some of the companies that have done this already, they're using the same model that they've been using, which is collect this data and then sell it later. Okay, so we have to be careful. We have to make sure that our participation is protected. Our individual and our community rights are protected in these efforts.
I heard that targeting HBCUs.
It is.
So parents, just be aware. And let's do this if we can, Dr. Ewing, before we go. For those who are listening, maybe list 2 or 3 or 4 steps that people should take when making a decision about sharing their DNA with anybody. 2 or 4 things that they should think about, that they should information they should seek and have front of mind.
So ways that you can protect your DNA: 1, be informed. check out the privacy policies, the consent forms that come along with the test kits, that come along with the research experience. Be informed. Ask questions of those researchers. Ask questions of other research participants as well. That way you learn more about the type of research experience that would really fit your needs. And then beyond research, I really encourage people to engage in that conversation, in that candid conversation with family members, so that we can better understand our risk for various conditions, and continue that conversation with your loved ones and with family members, because that's the way that we will really be able to better understand how to navigate personalized healthcare, and even navigate certain research studies. And lastly, I encourage us again to not only show up as participants in research, but let's get involved all across the board. Our presence has to be pervasive throughout the research experience as principal investigators, the people conducting the studies, the clinicians, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a dietitian, the ones caring for the community that's involved. And to go back to the last point that we were talking about in terms of targeting HBCUs, also target them to become physicians, to become scientists, whether they're getting their PhD or some type of doctorate degree, to become the businessmen and businesswomen running these clinical trials, running the studies. Don't just target them as participants, target them all across the board and truly invest in their future. Watch and look and see if people's actions truly align with their words, because we have to hold people accountable.
Very well put. And we thank you both. Want to acknowledge folks too, Dr. Kittles. So he's the DNA science research part of African Ancestry. So when you submit your DNA, he is the one that is doing that research and that process. And again, he's here, he's present, you see him, he looks like us, he's accountable to us. And that's the difference. If you're messing around with some other stuff and you don't see that, even throughout this whole COVID thing, some of us had to, kind of raise a little hell, because at the beginning of this, every doctor, every expert on television was white. So hold it. We had black scientists and black doctors and an NMA and black medical schools. Mm-hmm. We kind of had to still, and frankly, there still isn't the representation that ought to be there. But it's harder to pick us off when you see people who look like us, when we have our own representation in all of these conversations, and then people have to respect us, or at least they should. Well, Dr. Kittles, of course, is at AfricanAncestry.com. Dr. Ewing, you want to let our audience know if and where they can find you, if they want to hear more about what you're doing?
Yes, thank you. So I am active on social media. On Twitter, you can find me at AltoVC. So it's my first name with an extra E. On Instagram, I am _social_scientist. And then for those of you who still use Facebook, I am Altavise Ewing as well. But please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Again, I feel like I'm here with the purpose of protecting my community. And I'm affirmed in that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. It's been an honor to speak with you. Dr. Rick, brother, good to see you.
Great to see you too, brother.
For the record, Gina holds Rick and me accountable individually and collectively. That's the behind the scenes thing. So that's the way that works. Amen.
That's right.
Thank you both for being a part of this. This has been a great Remember Who You Are summit, and you all have made it even greater. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Okay.
All right.
So I think we're going to be joined by Gina. There she is.
Lord, there she is. All right. Dr. Page.
What you doing here? What are you doing here? I thought you were leaving.
Oh, I'm supposed to leave? All right.
No, you can stay. You can stay. I'm just surprised to see you. You gonna stay? You gonna go?
No, I'm You know what? I'll stay.
Yeah, hey, brother.
I'll stay.
It's rare we all together, and like I said, Gina can hold us accountable in the same room. So
That's right.
You know.
Yeah, I'm glad we have this on video, so we can. It's not often that you see Rick and I in the same room. So welcome, Dr. Kittles, and this has been an amazing, amazing week of conversations and presentations and all sorts of things to help people remember who they are. And it's all led up to what we're going to do next, which is, if you all remember, on day 3, I think it was, we did, no, was it day 3? Day 2? I can't remember now. Day 3. We did a bet on Black. We had a panel with the founders of shopblack.us, and they talked to us about all things recycling, all things Black business. Let's put it that way. Chantrell P. Lewis and Tony Lawson were our guests. And I said afterwards, I think Tony is the DJ and Chantrell is the rapper, because he's the laid back one of the crew. And so Chantrell took the African ancestry test, Rick, and she's here with her mother, I think, to get her results.
All right.
Hey! There she is.
What's up, y'all?
Hi.
Is this your beautiful mother?
Hello, everyone. Greetings.
Hello, Mrs. Scott. Welcome, welcome.
I said, should I call her? I was like, should I call you Patricia on the panel too? She was like, no way, I'm Mama.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being with us, Mrs. Scott. We love Chantrell. And this is such an honor, and it's exciting that she wanted to do her African ancestry reveal with us. But let's start off, Chantrell, because you had already traced one branch of your tree on your father's side, right?
Yep, 15 years ago, because shout out to you all for being in business for 17 years. That's like incredible. That is a huge accomplishment. But so 2 years after you all were founded, I bought the patrilineal test from my dad because I knew more about our family lineage on his side. And the results were sent to New Orleans like right at the same time that Hurricane Katrina was hitting. So I remember like I was devastated, because of course I was devastated because of Katrina, but then I was like, oh, and then my ancestry results, you know, we can't get them. So you all rerouted them to Philadelphia, where I was here in grad school at the time. And then we found out that my patrilineal lineage is Igbo. So that I just remember crying my eyes out. Like there was so much devastation that we experienced as a city and as a people in terms of our heritage being at risk of being lost, and our culture and our memory. And to find out there was this link that was like rooting us in Nigeria, it was a very, very powerful moment. And so, yeah, that was really exciting. And I was like, I got to do my mama side.
So, Chantrell, I know that your matrilineage is equally as important to you, but you've been highlighting that recently. So talk to us about why you chose to do your matrilineage at this time.
Like, it's been on my mind for years. And of course, I would not go with any other company but African Ancestry. Like, how could anybody go to any other company to do their DNA but a Black-owned company with scientists who have, you know, roots at Howard? So that was just really important as a Howard graduate. But also, I was invited by Girl Trek, who you're affiliated with through your aunt, Miss Faye. Hey, Miss Faye. Who, Vanessa and Morgan, the founders of Girl Trek, they wanted me to executive produce a campaign called Daughters Of, which morphed into a film that I directed, in which Black women were being called and asked to name their matrilineal lineage as far back as they could. Because when Vanessa and Morgan did their epic talk at TED in 2017, they started off their talk by naming their matrilineal lineage and saying, I am the daughter of. And so through this process, I've been able to trace my roots back farther than I can imagine. And I was like, I just need to find out, who our ancestors are on the continent, particularly because I'm a Lukumi priest, a Yoruba African traditional priest, and African ancestry and ancestor veneration is so important to our practice and who we are. And so I thought, what better time than to find out now?
So we have a clip from your trailer of Daughters of, but before we get to that, I don't think you say who you're the daughter of in that clip. Can you tell us who you're the daughter of?
Yes, and I don't even know if my mama knows this, but I am Chantrell, the daughter of Patricia, the daughter of Gladys, the daughter of Verna, the daughter of Susan, the daughter of Celestine, and the daughter of Susan.
Mm.
All women living in Louisiana back to the 1800s.
Mm. Mm.
That is powerful. That actually brings tears to my eyes. So many people take this test who can't name all of those mothers,
Right.
Chantrell.
Right.
That is truly a gift that you were able to. Did you name 7 mothers? I was trying to count.
I think 6. Yeah, 6
mothers. That is a gift that you have for yourself and that you've shared with us. Let's take a look at how you put this all together with the Daughters of documentary.
We actually know how to detach ourselves from the suffering of the world in order to soar spiritually. We know how to do it. We're good at it. So boy, while these times are hard in this country, we better tap into the knowledge and the wisdom and the skills of Black women.
I am the daughter of Trina, who is the daughter of Charleston.
I am Teresa.
I am Tanya, and I'm the daughter
Who
of
is the daughter of Lucinda.
I am Brittany,
Who is the daughter of
daughter of Debbie.
I am Chantrell Patrice, daughter of Louis.
You got me at the end of the interview.
I can't wait to see this documentary, Chantrell. It's such power just in the trailer, and I know that you recently won an award at the Black Star Film Festival. So congratulations! It was the best video.
Shine Award, the best film from a Philadelphia-based filmmaker.
And is this your first film?
It is my first film.
Girl, you knocked it out the park with your first film. It must be because you're the daughter of Patricia and all of those women who came before her. And so I'm really excited because what we were able to find for you.
I know, I'm like all nervous. Tony, fix me a mimosa. I'm drinking. Wonton roulette.
I may need your help, Dr. Kittles. So we found the ancestry of that woman who came before New Orleans.
Oh, goodness.
We don't know her name.
Wow.
But we know her ancestry. So you can now explore the traditions and the values and the beliefs of all of those women that you already know.
Right.
Plus where they came from before. And so we found, Dr. Kittles found your maternal ancestry in the most populous country on the continent of Africa. One that you are very familiar with already in your nuclear family, as well as your paternal lineage. The people that you share ancestry with and that you share ancestry with, Mrs. Smith, are the Fulani people living in Nigeria today.
Wow.
Glory be to God.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what do I tell Chantrell about the Fulani? Because her husband's Nigerian. I'm sure she knows all about the Fulani people. But then I was like, there are other people watching. So let's just throw out some facts. So the Fulani historically are the largest nomadic pastoral group in Africa. and they're present throughout many different African countries. Niger, Mali, Cameroon, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau. But because of the extensive nature of the database that Dr. Kittles compiled, we have Fulani samples from Mali.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't match yours. We have Fulani samples from Niger. They didn't match yours. We have Fulani samples from each of those countries. The people whose DNA you match with, and your mother matches with, and your grandmother, and all those daughters of your original mother are the Fulani people living in Nigeria today. Now, I was particularly excited about your Fulani result because during the Bet on Black session, you had on Fulani earrings. You were wearing Fulani earrings.
I did. Wow. It was crazy. I was thinking of Congo or Angola, but then something in my head kept saying Fulani. I was like, nah, not Fulani. I was just like, nah, not Fulani. But something in like my spirit and my mind just kept saying Fulani. That is what I'm blown away.
The Fulani women are known for their elegance. Chantrell, here is a photo of the earrings.
Yeah,
now, yours weren't quite this big.
Check out those earrings.
But those earrings are wide, twisted pieces of gold that generally have red wool wrapped around the hoop. And they're often a symbol of wealth, of Fulani wealth. The Fulani woman typically receives these earrings from her groom at marriage. And I've heard people say that the larger the earring, the more affluent the groom. So I don't know, Tony's going to have to get you a bigger pair of earrings, Chantrell, than those little ones you had on. I mean, they were a good size, but we'll check in with Tony on that. Or they're given as inheritance, passed down from her mother. So perhaps, your mother would have had them and then passed them down to you. Fulani women are also known for wearing henna, which is often part of their overall adornment. And of course, that's not unique just to Fulani women, but it does happen for Fulani women. And Chantrell, somebody told me a long time ago that the Fulani women were the most beautiful women in Africa. I'm sticking with that because I'm your cousin, my maternal ancestry. I am the daughter of a Fulani woman as well. Yes. But Fulani women are known for a lot of adornment, specific adornment around their hair. So you often see a lot of coins, a lot of beading worn on their head. And then I thought I'd bring it into present day Fulani referencing, I guess, for everybody so that we can see how we are informed as African Americans by our African Fulani braids. You know, we see Fulani braids all over nowadays in a variety of different styles. Alicia Keys rocks them often. So I just wanted to share a few symbols of the grace and prestige that you enjoy historically, that your mother Patricia enjoys historically as a descendant of Fulani women in Nigeria today.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Royalty.
Wow. I'm speechless. Mama, you have anything to say?
Well, you know, I love my hats. I always wear hats. And in fact, I just told your dad, I said, I'm going to put on my hat. He said, oh, no, just look natural. So, you know, I'm always dressed.
Yes. Accoutrements. My mom, I get the accoutrements from my mama. And what's crazy is I just started like wearing smaller earrings. I mean, for the past probably like 15, 20 years, I've like been known, like my style was like wearing like really, really like, you know, excessively large earrings. So I always like gravitated towards that. I'm blown away. Tony's like sitting right here. He's like, wow. Because we said this country, we knew Nigeria, but I wasn't thinking Fulani.
Wow. Well, Tony, your wife is Fulani, so now you got to get her to start eating some Fulani food. I don't know if there's food that's unique just to the Fulani, but you all were talking about that in our previous session, Tony wants you to start eating more Nigerian food. So now she doesn't really have an excuse, Tony.
So it's Nigerian on both sides, right? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like. I'm a Niger girl through and through, so I could really represent, Niger with pride, even more so than I already do.
That's great. That's great.
And Chantrell, Nigeria is one of the countries that we find results from most often at African ancestry, and the Fulani come up fairly regularly in those results. And so you have a huge family over in the African ancestry online community. I'm looking at our Facebook feed and they're all like, congratulations, welcome cousin, throwing up Nigeria flags. So you definitely got to check that out. Go over to the African ancestry online community and on Facebook, because your cousins are waiting for you.
I'll do that. Oh, I'm still speechless. I'm like blown away.
How did we do that, Tony? She's the talker. How do we make the talker speechless? I am really glad and honored to have given you this information and to have Dr. Kittles with us, Chantrell. It's a very rare occasion that both of us are in the building, so to speak, for a reveal. And so you are very special to us. And thank you, Mrs. Smith, for having such an incredible daughter and being part of an amazing lineage of Black women, African women.
Yep.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I'm so, Tony said it's a miracle.
Well, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Gina. Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Dr. Kittles. Y'all have a good day.
Okay.
You do the same.
Have a good day. Stay safe.
Congratulations.
And thank you, Rick, for staying on. I know you have a lot of things to do, but we'll let you go. Thank you so much.
All right. You guys take care. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Peace, Brother Rick.
All right.
All right. Wow.
Whoo, Mark.
As many times as I've witnessed that, and as many times as we've done it together, I could not control the tears that were coming out of my eyes. And the beauty of this is, it was like we things must be transgenerational. Why would I start crying about somebody else's DNA? The reason is, y'all, because we miss our ancestors without even knowing who they are. We miss them. It is in our spirit. You can't even, how can you not be curious? How can you not wonder and long for who those sweet people might have been, or what they might have looked like, or how they might have loved us and us loved them back? And so, we talk about a lot of stuff. It's been a rough week for us. But one thing we can do, I've been saying to folk, I'm tired of hearing people mad talking about what they not going to do. What about what you can do? You can start the process of reconnecting with who you are, taking this test and going back. Because in the end, that's all we have. When everything else fails, all we have left is who we are and what's in our genes and what's in our blood and the land from which we come. So I just want to encourage people. I know folks are mad right now about a lot of things, but do this too, so that at least you'll have something when the rest of this foolishness all falls apart, as it is rapidly doing. Gina, how you feel about the summit? How you feel about how it's gone this week?
I feel like I've been floating on a huge ball of energy all week long. When I tell you, actually for longer than a week, because we've been planning, but I think the energy just went up a couple notches during this week. Every session has been electric. Yeah. Every speaker, every presentation has been overflowing with information. The engagement by the folks in the chat and in the comments and in the emails we've been getting and on Facebook when I would go live has just been unparalleled. This is the first time we've ever tried anything like this, Matsamela. And I have to say it has been a resounding success. Now, it's not because anything I did. It's not because anything you did. It's because of this team that we have behind us. Look at me crying again. Okay. But because of this team, we have an amazing team behind the scenes. Rolando, Seba, Trinket, Hatib, the whole African Ancestry family in the office, our science team out in California. Everybody has come together. Everybody has pitched in. Shout out to Ty, who's our Facebook African Ancestry online community moderator. She really is the boss over there at the AAOC. Everybody has stepped up to help to contribute to making this week something that everyone can walk away with learning something about. These are very important times, Mark. This Black Pride Renaissance that I keep talking about is in direct connection with all of the other horrible stuff that's going on for us, right? The social justice issues that we're continuing to face and deal with and be offended by the outcomes. But we are staying Black. We're staying proud. And this week has been an opportunity for people to get a foundation, to understand what identity is, and to get some tools and some approaches that they can use in transforming their identities, in addition to taking the African Ancestry test, so that they can become stronger and more successful individually, and then as the community that we are all a part of here in the Caribbean, in South America, in Europe, and in Africa, all the continents where Black people are. And I want to thank you because you answered the call. I know you always do that, but you answered the call. I know you've been on 1 million Zoom calls this week, and you have your own podcast. Listen, you all, I don't know if we've said it enough, but in addition to checking out all the presenters, you have to go to Make It Plain podcast. You can get it on all the streaming podcast services, right, Matsamela? Makeitplain.com, and check out the work that Matsamela Matfumo is sharing with us. He moderated the Planting Seeds of Revolution discussion with Dr. Asante Wasuni Ali. That was 2 days ago, day 4, I think. And he was the perfect person because he represents revolution. He represents revolution for African ancestry. Mark, you have been a champion of ours from the beginning. And so thank you so much for being here with us this week.
Well, I couldn't help but be a champion since you walked in my studio, over a dozen years ago, and let me know where I came from. And I was able to tell my grandmother who her mother's mothers, or where her mother's mother came from. Gina, you thanked everyone, and I concur with all the great work that the team has done. But you deserve thanks. This is a Black-owned business run by an African-American woman. You talk about this Black Pride Renaissance, but everybody's talking about this is the moment of Black women. But Gina has been doing this for years. And she's put this business on her back and kept it alive. And so we ought to commend her for that. And then when you're doing that, running a business like this, where you're opening people's minds, it's one of the hardest things to do, y'all, sometimes, to get people to spend their own money, opening their minds to their own freedom. All right. But Gina not only has done it, but then to take on something else like this, and for a whole week to have a summit like this, with thousands of people signed up and have been participating, all of you watching, That is an incredible accomplishment. It took courage to do it. It took vision for her to do this Remember Who You Are Summit. And as soon as she called me and said, is this something we should do? I said, absolutely. It's great. And I'm very honored, Gina, to be a part of it and to once again be held accountable by you and also to get emotional with you. That's usually how it works. Accountability and emotion. So,
Matsamela, do you remember when I did your reveal in that studio? It was you, me, and Veronica Pace. Veronica Pace.
Amen.
And you couldn't talk.
No, I couldn't.
The talk show host couldn't talk. And I looked at Veronica and I was like, uh-oh, what do we do?
Yeah.
That for me was very telling. You're right. The emotion has been there between us from the very beginning.
Yeah. And again, it never goes away. So it's not like you become immune to it. Like I said, every time this happens, folks, if you have not had this experience for yourself, you're missing something. And do it for your loved ones as well, for your elders, those before you, and those who come behind you. Now, a lot of great panel discussions this week. Gina Page, please let people know where this Remember Who You Are Identity Summit will live if they want to see it again.
Yes, thank you, Mark. So the sessions from today, the Understanding and Owning Your Genetic Identity, the Reveal, and then My Crying Fest will be available for the next 24 hours. But we are offering what we're calling the Genius Class Pass. So if you get the Genius Class Pass, you'll be able to watch all of the sessions. You can rewatch your favorites. You can watch the ones you've missed. You can get people together and watch one together and talk about it. So you can do that with the Genius Class Pass. And if you go to AfricanAncestry.com/summit, you can purchase the Genius Class Pass there. It's on our website, and I encourage you to do that so that you can watch it anytime, at your convenience, anywhere. And and so I think that's all we have, Mark. Matsamela, Reverend Matsamela Matfumo.
We're dressed alike.
Yes. I don't know. You can't really see mine as well, but there you go. Remember who you are. This is the time. I'll leave you with that. This is the time. We get to take full control over who we are and how we identify ourselves. We get to find our greatest power and restore our legacies, not just for ourselves, but as Matsamela said, for all of those who came before us and all of those who came after us. Thank you so very much for joining us this week. And we will be back soon with more information and more content to share with you all about remembering who you are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out this week. I hope our time together with experts in psychology, economics, history, science, culture, and the arts has helped you build a stronger sense of who you are personally and within the community. To trace your ancestry, visit us at shop.africanancestry.com. Remember, you can watch each of these sessions again over the next 24 hours, or purchase the Genius Class Pass on AfricanAncestry.com/summit. Please continue to follow the Remember Who You Are campaign as we help people across the diaspora reclaim the legacy of their past to discover the greatness in themselves.